Yes. Awesome. Let's get started then. Damien arrived in the perfect moment for us to start talking about transition design. Um, cool. So this is the topic of today's session. And just a quick introduction. We are the Bristol Hub. Uh, Myself, Hannah, and James are the core team, the people who kind of are engaged quite often in thinking about the hub and creating some type of a structure to it, and let's say guiding some of the foundations of the hub ahead. And we have also uh, the Partners and Associates group, which is a group that helps us with the ideas that we have and discuss the ideas and think if it's viable and share their insights and so forth. So it's always a great way to put the ideas across and see if it lands with people, and they share with us as well, and we create this communication. That's how we grow the hub and so forth. So just for you to know a bit more about who's behind or within these structures. And we are part of this great international hub network, and we are the last ones in all the last ones that were created. But of course, we have many other hubs, and yeah, you can definitely check them out and their activities because there's a lot of great things happening around the world. So that's it as a quick introduction about us, and yeah, talking about transition design today. And before we get started, just to let you know that this session is being recorded and is going to be available in our YouTube channel afterwards. We have the chat function available if you want to address any comments or questions. And we ask you to be on mute if you're not speaking, but please don't hesitate to raise your hand or unmute yourselves when you want to comment or share any thoughts and ideas. Okay, so let's get started. So before we start talking about transition design per se, we start with a little introduction and context. So as we talked about before, not gonna go too deep into it right now, but we have different types of systems that we are in constant exchange with. Some of these are simple systems. So for example, the a bowling uh, a bowling track is a very simple system, right? You have the ball that hits the pins, and there's nothing that is too complicated about that in its basic, let's say, physics and basic structure. It is very simple in a lot of ways, but it's very fun. We have complicated systems which are a bit more challenging in terms of its structures and its foundations, and how to get, for example, a rocket to the moon or to other planets. You need a lot of expertise. You need a lot of engineers and physicists and mathematicians and many people that study a lot of years and put their ideas together and so forth. But you know that there's an end goal to it. You know where you want to be at the end of this process, but but we have this other type of system, the complex systems, that are very different from the other ones because they are very adaptable. You have normally different emergent processes happening, very unknown processes and how things evolve. It can be quite tricky to get our heads around. So it's a completely different way of operating and understanding than the previous two systems that we have here. So this is mainly what we're gonna be focusing on today. And of course, in these different types of systems, we have different ways of understanding change and the problems that arise in these different systems. So we have here the Cynefin framework, which is a very interesting tool and concept for us to understand once we are faced with a challenge in these systems, how can we go about them? How can we make sure to find a better way to deal with these challenges? And of course, in here we have clear or simple systems that require some practices, but of course, in complex systems, we require different practices because the nature of the system and the nature of the problems are completely different. And sometimes the mistake is to bring one way of thinking and one way of problem solving or dealing with these issues to another system, and then making the process of dealing with these problems a lot more difficult than what it should be, essentially, and end up nowhere, right? So understanding what types of systems we're talking about, and then using the best tools that we have to go about the challenges is actually very, very important. And misplacing them can lead us to pathways that can be very difficult and very challenging to overcome. And we normally see that when we talk about healthcare systems, generally, they're very, very complex, as an example. And we use simple systems tools to deal with the problem with the national healthcare system, for example, and the problems of patients not being treated in time, or the burnout of doctors and nurses and all the healthcare staff. So it's very easy to see ourselves, societies, misplacing these different tools, and that can lead to very challenging outcomes. So saying that, because this is very important when we talk about transitions and change in these different systems, which is the topic of today's section, right? So since we're talking about complex systems and we're talking about change or transition, we can start diving into this topic. And first of all, when we talk about change, when we talk about transitions, there's always some type of a context around it, right? It doesn't happen in a vacuum, it doesn't happen in out of nowhere. There's always a background story around why that change is happening. So understanding which context we're talking about allows us to then not misplace our tools, as we were talking about before, and allows us to create also the conditions for those changes or those transitions to be smoother, and for people to participate in the process in a way that makes sense for everyone. So here's a good graphical representation of you can have the best idea that you can have, or the best project, but if it's placed, let's say, in a context that doesn't allow for it to thrive, then it doesn't matter if it's a good idea or not, it's not going to go ahead, right? But when we place these ideas in let's say, quote unquote, right context, or a space or a time that makes sense, then we see the evolution of these ideas and the evolution of these projects a lot faster, and they thrive a lot more because the context is right, and because the context makes sense for them to just evolve. And I'm sure you've seen that in your practices before, that creating the conditions for some types of changes to be in place makes a total difference, right? Do you have any examples that came to you right now as you're nodding, in terms of ideas that were in a different, in a wrong context, or projects that were in a very challenging context that
I
didn't
can
go
reflect
anywhere?
on that. I'd be happy
Yes.
to. This really illustrates my journey in the system change arena, because and probably my age, honestly, because when I was younger, like the nature of the work I was in with around social care is that everyone's very young and enthusiastic and full of bright ideas about how to fix very complex problems, and we all think we're right. And that was me, really. And I had these ideas of projects, and they were very much related to the people that I worked with, and they probably would have worked, but they weren't landing in the right place in the right time. And what I found is that I've evolved this is just my role in terms of my skills and the resources that I add to the system, is that I've moved into the roles of creating the conditions of possibility for other people's projects. And in order to do that, you almost have to be like bland beige canvas, because if you go in with your own ideas about what should work, especially if you're connecting with different diverse communities, you're bringing your own biases into that space, and you're probably wrong, is what I've learned. And I've seen it over the years, people who are kind of like really have the right intention, but are so fixed on their idea and their project that it's never going to work because there's no space for anyone else or any input. And the ones that work are the ones where they're kind of invested in the community that they know or that they're in. That's very much a principle now of my work, is that the people who drive these things should be a part of it. And it can't be that person from that lofty table over there who's got a great idea to put their idea into the system as a fix, because that will never work effectively. That's a lot of blah, but yeah.
No, it's perfect. And yeah, as you're saying, it reminded me as well of Natimi's comment about communicating systems, and what are some of the conditions that need to be in place in order for these conversations to actually land on people, or people to be actually open for these conversations, right? If people are completely shut down, if they don't have an openness to hear something different, then you can say the best things that there are in the world, it's not gonna land. And you're gonna just waste a lot of energy just talking, and people are gonna be like, okay, no deadlines, no problems, next. you know. And yeah, that's the thing related to what Hannah is saying as well. Sometimes you're so excited because that project is great, but then there's no space for the conversation. There's no space for the exchange, and that's very, very difficult. So yeah, the challenges.
Dimi, you seem to be familiar with this. Is this resonating for you?
Yeah, my colleagues work as consultants, and what they usually do at the start of a project is bring everyone together to at first how do I say this, merge their mental models of what their goals are in a project, because well, they talked about this to me, that they often have a situation that if you start a project without everyone being aligned, that they really want to reach the same goal, you will end up working on different projects at the same time, and there won't be the project where everyone is that everyone is working on, and that's why they are usually starting with bringing kind of a starting with a kind of a system map of the whole project. What are the goals that everyone wants to reach, and what do they understand as these goals? When are they reached, and how far are we right now? And this whole conversation is laying the foundation to actually being able to work together. And so yeah, that's kind of basically this, just starting by laying down the foundation, the right context to be able to bring any project into fruition. Yeah, into the end. So that's basically this work, I guess.
Nice. Oh, you're going to say something, Hannah?
Yeah, you reminded me, this whole conversation is very nostalgic. I'm remembering all sorts. I just remember working in systems where there wasn't much strategic knowledge equity, which happens in the voluntary sector in England, because people get promoted up from very low roles without the training and skills development experience. And as a result, whenever there were strategic conversations designed to map principles or the ways of working or how we might approach something, everyone always diverged straight into the detail of the project delivery, not realizing that they then were doing the thing that they all probably would have hated if you'd have described it to them, which is removing our clients from the scenario and dictating from lofty perches. And that was because people didn't understand the journey. So there's creating the conditions of possibility, and that's on a continuum of delivery. And at that beginning point, you can't. Yeah, it's just interesting that was a habit. I just did what I could in that space and actually moved into other jobs. So that system could still be doing that for all I know. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you have lots of projects and stories to share. And yeah, I think it's always a learning process, isn't it? It's always good to start with some challenges and to make some mistakes and then learn from it, and having that support kind of system to then talk about the challenges and talk about the mistakes. I think this is part of the context as well, to have that space to iterate through what went not wrong, but what went in a different route, and then what we can do to make it better, right, with other people's experiences. So it's always important as well. Okay, let's continue. So yeah, we're talking about conditions for change, right? And then I found this paper that I thought was very interesting. And again, I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of different stories that bring some of these topics in your projects. There are essentially some of the features that are involved in changing or change processes or transitions. And these three, I thought were very insightful. And of course, I want to hear from you if you agree with that, if you don't agree, and if you've seen that examples and so forth. So one of those is people and power. So of course, we're talking about complex systems, and here we focusing more on social challenges, right, and social systems. So of course, people it's going to be a very important part of it, and the power dynamics and the consequences of how people interact with each other and so forth. Then we have culture and social interaction. We talked about relationships before and interactions normally in systems, and this is a very important concept and very important part of change. And then we have here leadership and learning, the adaptive nature of complex systems that is very important to be aware of. They're not part of the simple systems, right? And then sometimes we take that, we don't really look at the relationships and the learning and adaptive nature, because that doesn't really, it's not really involved in the more simple systems, but in complex systems is a very core idea, and we should be able to go back to it quite often. So just talking a bit about these, and I have all the resources and the bibliography in the end, and we can go back and go deeper into it as well. So here in people and power, how an individual reacts to a change initiative depends on context, as we've been talking about, personality, their role, location, the primary network, and so forth. But also how the change affects their power, or the power of their community of practice within the local hierarchy. We are social beings, right? And the idea of how we relate to each other and what is our, let's say, space in this social context is very, very important for us. So talking about change is really talking about the roles. What is the role of that CEO? What is the role of that staff in the organization? How these relate? And if I change one thing, how the relationship is going to change? How that relationship is going to influence the way that they communicate to others and so forth. So it's very complex, of course. But this is a very key part of paying attention to social, mainly, right, social complex systems. Do you have any examples that come to mind when you hear that? Maybe some tensions that you heard, that you've been involved in social complex systems and so forth?
Not directly. I just thought about a book that I read a while ago. I'm terribly afraid that I forgot which book it was, but it talked about how societal systems might change, and that it usually hinges on people in power giving up their power to change the system, and that this is mostly the bottleneck to to change any systems, because usually the people who get to this level of power are those who want this level of power. So it was talking about how it was asking the questions: how can we achieve societal change if those who would want to change the systems are usually not those who get to the position where you could change it. I don't have a solution to this question, but I thought it was an interesting thing to think about, and I think it's well, I guess the society is kind of a high level, the high level part of this problem. I mean, all these structures are also there in smaller subsystems, like in companies, in organizations, in families even. You would have the same place, but either the person who has the power gives it up by themselves to change the system, or they are being made to give it up by a revolution of some kind, or a change of by auto pressure, kind of a way.
Yeah, amazing. Well, the end of the year is coming, right? And we know the complexity of Christmas dinners. And who is going to buy the turkey? Who is going to get the beer? And no, I don't want you to go, and all that, right? So yeah, we have this experience in our everyday life. And as you said, when we talk more about the society as a whole, right, as one system, then we have governments, and then we have conflicts of interest, and then we have elections, and then we have all that, and the image that comes out of the government. And yeah, anyway, it's a lot of different power issues that we face in the more local level, as you said, of our families, and more in the greater level of societies. So yeah, this is everywhere. You can see very ferocious nods a lot. Any other comments about that?
This is reminding me of why I've moved into grassroots work as a primary focus. So I spent 8 years on a system change program, a well-funded system change program, which drew a lot of strategic players from the city around the table. And we did the learning thing, we did all the right things in terms of the system change stuff. And I was just astounded by the kind of psychological acrobatics that people were capable of to be able to engage in it's almost like being able to compartmentalize or something, but being able to engage and develop a narrative and language around system change, and very assertively like applaud each other for how great they were doing, whilst simultaneously being able to change nothing at all about the way that they worked in any way, shape or form, even with really direct, regular coaching, where I was like, this is the thing, that's the cause and effect, can you see? And they're like, no. And so I think this was quite unique. This is quite unique. This was a space where it's really common to have like a front image and then what's actually going on in the background, and that in that culture there's like an agreement, and it's a strategic way to play the game. So that's difficult to crack. But it has just driven me to focus on like social and community organizing from a grassroots level, maintaining focus on redistributing power through building the oh my god, words, I don't know, the impact of grassroots, rather than relying on people letting go of the power that they fought hard to retain and protect.
Amazing. Yeah, well, you said there, very important, right? Redistributing the power, and I think empowering as well. So I was thinking about that the other day. It was raining, and there were a lot of cars on the street, and then there were some people kind of trying to cross the road. And if you just have one person in front of the car, then of course the car can run over that person, right? But if you have 50, 100 people in front of that car, then what are the cars gonna do, right? So it's shifting some type of a narrative around power to the places that really need to hear that the power is with them, and not with that one car that is sitting on the top of the hierarchy, whatever, right? The power and the idea of power sometimes needs to change for some things to go towards a different transition space. But yeah, Thomas, Ken, welcome would you like to join the conversation? Great to have you here.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate what you're getting into, but I'm so far behind from where you started. I'm just delighted to listen in at this moment and pick up some of the gems that you're sharing. So thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, thanks, Yasmin.
Thank you, Thomas.
So sorry, I turned up late. Really fascinating conversation. I'm kind of a bit out of my depth when I talk about kind of power translation. I think about it in a kind of different way with my work, and a lot of what's been spoken about kind of echoes kind of translation within systems of different characteristics that enable these pathways to what symbolizes power, I think. And you've got lots of other things that act around this: long-term, long-wave cycles, economic cycles, Kondratiev cycles, that kind of thing. These sorts of interactions between different types of systems, I think, are what enable these kind of characteristics to come to the fore. So it's really interesting to hear about it from different perspectives.
Nice. Yeah, and again, this is the moment to challenge these ideas as well, because these are just, what do you think about this? This is the, let's say, one of the purposes of these sessions is just to put some ideas and then hear if you agree or not, and if you have an experience with the opposite and so forth. So yeah, all experiences and all ideas are welcome. But thank you. Okay, so another one that we talked about, it changed, okay, is the culture and social interaction, right? And we talk again, Ntimi, he was mentioning in the beginning about his interest in communicating about systems. And here, the idea of communication is quite crucial, right? Because this is how we interact with each other. And then through these interactions, that's how we create culture and how we understand each other's aims and purposes around a specific project, a specific community idea or whatever. So the same paper shares, if communication is at the heart of a successful change intervention, then culture as the primary means by which an organization communicates or socializes its values, patterns, goals, and functions is a core determinant of the outcomes of a change process. So the culture that we're embedded in, and the analogy of the fish in the water, right? It's very difficult sometimes for us to understand the culture we're embedded in and how these communication channels can perpetuate the culture that we're in. And sometimes just changing the language makes a big difference. Sometimes changing the analogy makes a big difference for us to stop and think, oh, this is not what I meant. And then going back to your topic in the beginning, aligning the expectations, aligning the goals or ideas about how we would like the process to be and so forth is so key, because words by itself, we can use the same words but with completely different meanings, and that changes everything, right? We're talking about, I don't know, change, and then you think more about a non-linear community-based change, and I'm talking about maybe just profit market kind of change, and we're not going to land anywhere if we just continue talking about change without aligning our expectations and what we mean by that, right? So does it land with you, this idea?
I definitely lands with my experience. You know, it picked up on those kind of key terms, their values, patterns, goals, and functions. Those are all elements within the constitution of society, right? So how those are utilized determines how we communicate within a society. So it's kind of a fundamental aspect of what we're talking about here, this kind of translation between people, between perception and uptake. So yeah, you know, this is kind of the core of my understanding. I think it really chimes with it.
Nice. And Timmy, I think you wanted to comment on that as well.
I just wanted to comment that it's again a book reference, but we talked yesterday with my team about the book The Culture Map from Everett Meyer, which kind of compares how different cultures value do have different values and patterns in communicating mostly, and how one thing that is said in context of one culture can be completely misunderstood by another culture. And I thought, well, it's always really interesting and important to kind of know where you're coming from and know what you're saying and know where the people know the context of where you're communicating to. I think there were kind of different scales where you where different cultures were compared. Well, like for example, you would say that I would have to look at my notes again, but I think we would have some cultures where you have very direct feedback and say exactly what is wrong and be in confrontation, and everything would be nice and fine in the context of these teams. But there would be other cultures where doing this would be really a direct offense to everyone where you put the negative feedback in. And well, it really depends on firstly the culture of I guess the country where we're talking where you're acting, but also I would say the culture of the team of the organization, because they're also kind of every group has their own culture in the small ways. Again, it's the same thing as before. We have the concept at the grade level and at the lower level, and
Yeah.
they are like different contexts. I just thought about we recently had a project with a team that wanted to make a project together, and one team member left the team, and this completely changed the dynamics in the team, because that person had kind of a big influence how everyone perceived themselves and their roles, and how confident they saw themselves as contributors in the team. And it was fascinating to me how much one person can influence the dynamics of well of a communication in a team that size.
Yeah.
And I guess this is
Yeah.
important
No,
to
that's
mention.
very, very good point. And I think it relates to somewhat the idea that once we lose that stability, then we understand the importance of that person, or of that communication channel, or of that specific role in maintaining that harmony in the system. And it's very interesting to see sometimes just how one factor changes everything completely. So yeah, the interrelationships and communications are extremely important in complex systems. And lastly, for us to go more towards the design bit, here we have the leadership and learning, something that me, Hannah, and James are talking a lot about recently. And the idea that we had previously about leadership as being the one dictating where everyone should go based on some type of a more simple systems idea, and then you put that idea in a complex system, and then all the outcomes that you would expect will go in a completely different way, right? So effective in this context, this effective leadership is less about the cult of personality and more about the vigor of the social and networking relationships within an organization. This is the emergence of distributed leadership as the central thing. So being able to learn and adapt to the constant changing environment, not dictating, but being able to deal with the changes and supporting each other instead of just blaming and all that. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about here. And yeah, I'm sure you've seen something like that before.
I'd love, if I'm okay with that, not getting off track too much, because I excuse myself for coming in halfway through or later then. I'd love to hear more about the where you put, how you would play the cultural leadership shifting with respect to it being a lever point, a leverage point within a system where you're trying to create change. Can you talk to that and speak to that in terms of how that is can be one of the major leverage points that one can have in terms of changing the contextual perspective of the system?
Yeah.
A system.
So I think there's a lot about that, but one topic that comes to me is the mindset kind of shift. There's very high leverage, right, in those leverage points. So
the highest paradigm.
Yeah. So if you have a very top-down control and command kind of leadership, then you would create an environment and a culture and a mindset that would just do what they're told. And this is great in a very predictable environment, right? But as we understand in these complex systems, it's not predictable. So again, as we talked a bit in the beginning, one of the challenges that we have is using very simple and linear tools in a complex environment. And that goes in a completely different way. And we end up in a very chaotic and confusing space. So having that supportive leadership, more of a systemic based leadership, goes definitely a long way in complex environments, right?
Absolutely. And any type of linear solution that any leadership might come up with is a band-aid leadership solution, which leads to archetypes like fixes that fail, for example, right? And unintended consequences that come out with time delays, right? And but so you mentioned command and control leadership, and which I am assuming you're referencing there more towards collaborative leadership or networked leadership, and it's very challenging to look at a system, okay, or structure first of all of a system of leadership that helps you help the people shift the culture of leadership towards, shall we call it, collaborative leadership or leadership networking, or however you want to term the needed network leadership. You can also put that as a subset of collaborative leadership, I would dare say too. But finding out the ways to do that kind of structural change into a system through leadership that will then evoke the behaviors that we're looking for that are non-competitive at an individual level within your leadership, for example. This is a huge challenge.
Oh yeah, definitely. And especially if we consider, let's say, the robustness of some systems, right? That history and sometimes this is the mindset that has been working in some ways for 50 years. And then there's someone that comes and say, everyone, maybe we should do something different. You're like, no, how dare you? We've been doing that for 50 years. Are you joking me? And then, well, guess what? Times are changing.
Which leads you to the question, is there really such a thing as a quiet revolution?
Dun, dun. Ken, you can't just drop something like that 5 minutes to the end. You can't do that. This is not possible.
I have been confronted with that at least 2 times in my life, one time in Canada and presently also I'm from Warsaw, Poland, that's where I live. And of course, they talk about the quiet revolution that they had moving from communism to the free market. I moved in post that era, and I'm saying, what revolution? They still behave administratively in the country like they did in the communist era. It takes, I dare say, 2 things I think I would say on that. If you guys don't mind me jumping in very late, apologies for that. But I would dare say that a quiet revolution takes more generations to change because you've got iterations of it happening ever so slowly with feedback loops. And we're getting that right now with what we can presume a Putin-led government is doing, trying to get back to the Soviet era, minimally of the political geographical structures that they're dealing with here. Okay, and in comparison to militant or violent change, where you can have immediate shifting to new behaviors, but they're like elastic. The population is like an elastic band, and with that, when that short-lived generation is over or gets toppled themselves, they go right back to what it was.
Yeah.
Which leads me to another question: is can you really be a missionary for democracy in non-democratic societies? Okay, that's it. We can go now.
Now just drop the existential crisis and everyone's going to just be excited for our next session, right?
There you go. Yeah.
That's it. No, wow, those are massive questions. And yeah, I was talking to Natimi in the beginning. Would be good to have more topics for next year, because then we can always come back to it and refer to these sessions and so forth. So anyway, we can talk a lot about these topics moving forward. But anyway, I just wanted to close these. There were some other slides here to say, but basically we have this topic of transition design based on some of the ideas that we discussed before, complex systems. Then we talk about transitions, and then is there a space for the design to come and support, as you're saying, some of these transition moments that are required and they are needed. And we have some frameworks that could help us, again, going back to the idea of communication, to start this conversation, because as you said, Ken, it's definitely not something that you can flip the switch and just do, right? You need a long time to bring people into this mindset, into this conversation, and then being able to lead or to guide this transition. So here's some frameworks that we talk generally at SI. So we have the adaptive cycle. This is one's very well known. And then we have the multi-level perspective that we talk a lot at SI as well. And then we have, for example, the 2 loops model, that very simple model to start the conversation of transitions and systems and all that. And if you would like, we can have sessions to host how to use some of these frameworks, and then bring some case studies, some examples and so forth, that could be a lot more hands-on and a lot more practical. And then we can talk about the quiet revolution and all that.
I would be delighted. That would be fantastic from my side.
Perfect. Awesome. So that was it for today, everyone. These are some of the resources that I used for the session or for the presentation. Then some questions that we addressed, some of these during the sessions, and some other questions that were a lot more interesting than these ones. And yeah, coming up next, we have our ecosystem building session in a similar structure to this one. We're talking about ecosystems building. And then coming up, we have an interview about this book, Complexity, the Tao of Complexity, Making Sense and Making Waves with Jean Bolton, happening in January. Very, very interesting.
Mm.
And we have our social coming up on December, if you want to join us. And we have a book club starting on January as well, where we're going to review some books about complexity and systems thinking and have a great chat and yeah, get more out of books through conversations and sharing and so forth. It's always a great environment to be in. So really recommend everyone. And that's it. This is the Bristol Hub. Yes, Hannah, I'll finish now. Stop talking.
Thank you.
Is that the picture of Bristol?
Yeah.
One of those. Yes. Go on, Hannah.
Just saying thank you, Yasmin.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you.
Thanks, Yasmin.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, it was great.
Thanks all.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see you
Great
all.
to
Thanks
see you.
very much for allowing me to jump in and
Disrupt.
bully everybody.
The disruption is accepted. No worries. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and as Harry Potter says, mischief managed.
That's it. That's it.
Thanks,
Have
guys.
a great day and
Bye.
see you on our next session. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye. Was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.